All right. Okay, so who gets the host honors, Donna or Chris?
Donna's the host, I'm the co-host.
Okay. Okay, just make me co-host.
Do you want me to make you a co-host, Betsy?
Yes, please. That way, if I jump off, I can get back in.
Are we expecting everyone today?
Mike is going to be here at the beginning, but he has to hop off. He has clinic. Kara Beatty accepted. I did not hear from Sandy or Monique.
Now, would Monique come because she's immediate past chair? Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
And all that means is they didn't accept the
Right.
calendar invitation, but that doesn't mean anything.
Oh, and we're going to have a guest. Is your guest on?
Oh, that's right.
She's not here yet, but it should come up as Haley Jenkins.
Haley Jenkins.
Mm-hmm. As long as she's able to get on, okay.
Donna, I just let Sandy in.
Okay. And so, Kara, you sent her the link, right? Okay.
Yep.
Hi, Sandy. We're glad you're here. We are live on YouTube right now.
I'm not sure who iPhone is.
You want to send them a message in the waiting room and ask them who it is?
Oh, I just let him in.
Hi, I'm sorry. This is Haley Jenkins that is shadowing Kara this week.
Oh, hi, Haley.
Yeah, sorry. For some reason, my phone automatically puts it as iPhone.
It doesn't look like I'm able to rename it either.
Oh, she renamed it.
Okay.
Young people today, they've got all the skills.
All right. Sandy's phone just now came in too, so she should be.
Can you hear me? This is Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
Hi,
Yeah.
Sandy.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I was having audio issues, so I was trying to log in on the computer and my phone.
We understand. Hi, Monique.
Hey.
Really? We'll be getting started in a second. We're just waiting for 2 more people. Chris and Kara, do you want to make sure we wait for them, or do you want to go ahead and get started?
Chris, do we need to have a quorum of officers to begin?
Just like any other, well, not to begin, but just to take any vote. And actually, I think you have a quorum anyway.
Perhaps for the sake of time, we should go ahead and get started.
Sounds good. Well, one of the things we wanted to start off by doing was to welcome everyone in their new roles. So, Kara, should we ask everyone to introduce themselves and their new roles on the on the executive committee?
Sure, that sounds great.
You want to start?
Sure, I'm Kara Meixner, and I am the newly elected chair, and I am succeeding Monique Wilson. Not sure if I can fill her shoes, but I'll try.
Well, that's a nice segue. Monique, do you want to introduce yourself and your new role?
Hey, sure. I have tiny shoes, so don't worry. But I am Monique Wilson. I am the immediate past chair. That's it, right?
That's plenty. That's a lot.
All right.
Sandy, do you want to introduce yourself and your new role?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Andy Parker. I am the newly elected family ombudsman, and I don't think John was the former ombudsman. Can't remember his last name at the moment, but I'm really glad to be here.
John Heath, yeah, and we're really excited to have you in that role, Sandy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, family ombudsman is an important role on the council, support for our family members and survivors. All right, and okay, so Kara's on her way in. I just clicked that. While Kara's getting situated, we're just going to ask you today. We wanted to go over the potential agenda and get your input about it. Look a little bit about scheduling future meetings and a few other things. Hey, Kara, do you want to introduce yourself and your new role on council? Kara, you're muted.
Thank you. I just gave the biggest speech and everybody missed it. No, you would think after being like doing telehealth all day that I would know to kind of press those buttons. But I will start again. My name is Kara Beatty, and I was selected to be secretary on the council, and I'm really excited.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for joining this Zoom meeting after a whole day of telehealth. We appreciate that.
I had to do it. No worries. Thank you.
Kara M brought us a special guest. Do you want to introduce her?
Sure. So Haley Jenkins is here with me today, and Haley is a James Madison University graduate and will be pursuing her master's degree in social work. And so she's really interested in health practice, systems practices. Haley also serves currently at James Madison as one of our President's Engagement Fellows, which is a fellowship to support community engagement, engaged learning, civic learning, and other things. Just a fun fact, Haley and I had the opportunity to travel to Rwanda together last year,
Oh my gosh.
a little over a year ago, so right before COVID. And it's great to have her here. Haley, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Just thank you guys for allowing me to sit in and be a fly on the wall. I'm excited to see everything in action and how this goes.
Well, we'd love to have your input, but we have to know, what was Rwanda like? What was it like being in Rwanda?
Absolutely incredible. I don't even think I could have words. They just, the people that we were working with, we were doing university relations and with a bunch of different universities in Rwanda. And it's just this incredibly welcoming group with all of these great ideas and all these things to move forward. It's actually a huge shame the way that the trip planned out with COVID, because we had a lot lined up that will, I guess, get postponed until we can travel again.
Wow. Well, thanks for joining us. And so if you all don't mind, I'd like to just step through the agenda, and there's a few points we want to check in with you on, and then to get your feedback on if you feel this works for the next meeting. Obviously, at the meeting, we'll do welcome and introductions, including new members and new officers. Donna, do you want to remind us who the new members will be?
Yes, we have a new survivor member coming on, Kelly Lang. She was one of the facilitators at the October meeting about person-centered practices. We also, the commissioner also reappointed Nick Rudisil to serve a second 3-year term as an at-large member. He nominated himself, so he's very willing and excited to stay on. We also nominated, we had a professional position that came open, and Amber Walter from Sheltering Arms Institute was appointed to that position. And then the council asked the commissioner to use one of her 2 available commissioner designee spots to appoint an additional survivor member to council. And she used that designation and appointed Patrick Sandus, who is a survivor who currently serves on the Commonwealth Neurotrauma Initiative Trust Fund Advisory Board. He rotates off of that in, I believe it's July, and then he'll be unaffiliated with that group. So they all become effective on April 1st.
So at the meeting, we'll want to do introductions of that. I'm looking at the 15 minutes and wondering if we might want to play with that a little bit to give more opportunity for those 4 new members. Well, 3 new and 1 returning to be able to give an introduction. So that may be something to think about as we go through the agenda, whether or not that's enough time. Because we also have to do the roll call and the approval of the meeting minutes and the agenda. So that may not be enough time, so we'll take a look at that. One of the first action items that need to happen is, the good news is that the General Assembly did approve $1.2 million in new funding for brain injury services. And that comes through the advocacy of the brain injury providers themselves. They did a fantastic job of putting that together, getting a patron, and then following up with that. The language in that budget item is about workforce retention. So it is not necessarily to go through to, it does not have to fund new services. It is to help them maintain the services that they currently provide. And in making that request, the Alliance of Brain Injury Providers and the Brain Injury Association of Virginia, BIAV, did some extensive work to identify things like where their salaries are in relation to others in their field, and what it costs them to actually run the program. So they, as I said, they put a lot of work into that. When that happens, the council is asked to convene the funds dissemination committee review recommendations and then to make their own recommendation to the commissioner. So that will be one of the things that needs to happen at the meeting. There are a few things related to process that I just wanted to relay to you as we go into the meeting. So obviously we're going to be talking about members of this committee that feel comfortable dealing with a lot of numbers, maybe some spreadsheets, kind of understanding or a willingness to invest the time to understand the recommendations that are going to be made. There are 9 different providers, so there will be a lot of numbers. One of the things I'm going to suggest to you also to consider as we move forward in appointing this committee is that perhaps it is a good idea not to have anyone on the committee whose organization could benefit financially from the new funding, to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest. So something for you to consider. Basically what happens is the Alliance and BIAV are putting together their recommendations right now. Soon after the April meeting, they will submit those to Kara and to myself for the committee to recommend, for the committee to review. DAR staff, that would be Donna and myself, may also have some recommendations to offer. And there may be other groups that decide that they want to weigh in, but predominantly it will be DAR staff and the Alliance and BIAV. That committee will then review and take their recommendation back to the council, who will decide whether or not to approve it or not. And then it goes to the commissioner, and she considers that in terms of making the final decision in how the funds are distributed. So this is a recommendation. The DAR's leadership feels strongly that because, and I will be glad to share this with the Funds Dissemination Committee, that because of all the advocacy work that the providers did in this, that a lot of consideration should be given to their recommendation. So,
Chris, I have a couple of follow-up questions.
Sure, yes, I was just going to say any questions about that.
So I was thinking a little bit about conflict of interest. And, certainly I understand a direct conflict of interest, such as a provider that works directly with an agency or one of the Alliance members. But are you also thinking about conflict of interest in terms of a survivor member who receives or has received services, case management services? So I guess I'm just wondering how we're defining conflict of interest.
That's a really good question. Are there thoughts or input on individuals who may have benefited from the services that will receive funding?
I mean, that is a really good point. I wonder if some of that could shed light on things that, I don't know, could be of benefit, that they say, I had this experience and this was helpful. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, because it's like a double-edged sword, you know. They could have had a really positive experience with case management. I'm just picking on that one. And it's like, yes, this is where more funding needs to be in different areas of the state, but I don't know. At the same time, I see how that could end up influencing a decision.
And I wonder, based on what you're saying, whether or not there might be a distinction between whether or not somebody is currently receiving services versus someone who has in the past and doesn't currently have a relationship. Is that a good place to draw the line?
I mean, I think because we're sort of such a tight-knit group. I think every one of us could potentially have a conflict of interest, right? Like, I think, I have close ties to BICSV. co-written CNI grants with them, but I'm not currently working with them. But, so I think every one of us could potentially be tied to one of these provider groups.
Mhm.
So maybe what we need to look at is kind of the current affiliation. Or we could even look at like a clause, like within the past 2 years or something like that.
And typically when you're looking at language around conflict of interest, I know from nonprofit boards, one of the things that they're really looking at is, would someone directly benefit from these funds? So obviously if you're employed by the organization and it's going to be to increase salaries, then you have a direct financial link to that. Does that change anybody's thinking or how you want to approach this?
I agree with what Kara said. I feel like I came up here and I just had like mumbling, trying to get my thoughts together. But I think now I can, now that you've explained that, Chris, it does seem like a good idea too. You can have people involved, if they are survivors, but if it's not a financial incentive, it's not going to be a financial incentive like it would be for someone that's working somewhere else, essentially like a kickback.
Well, and so that also brings up though, if you're employed by or on the board of directors of these organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And that may knock more people out than you think. So I don't know.
And I think there's a couple places to go with that. I think it sounds like people, and I know Sandy, we haven't heard from you, and Monique, we haven't had a chance to hear from you yet either. But an individual on the payroll of an organization that will benefit, that seems like a clear line to us, and we would say we would discourage them from being on the committee. An individual on a board probably won't result financially, but do we feel like it's a good extra step to take? Or do we say, if you are on the board or involved in a project with the committee, and even though you might not benefit financially, we ask you to join only if you feel like you really can be looking at this with a very neutral lens?
Yeah, I guess this is Monique. I think that for like the survivor question was really throwing me, so I was really mulling over in my head. So I guess I think that we have a good grasp on that. The only other thing I would add to that is that we also might want to just be cautious of individuals. I think maybe it was Kara with a K who mentioned, like, if someone's experience was one way or the other, they might be really pushing for something that is really idiosyncratic. So some caution with that. And I think that's just something we have to be mindful of in a lot of areas with some of the survivors, which is normal and natural for someone to do. Your experience is your experience, but just for us to be mindful of that. And then I think with someone on the board, someone who's on a board, I agree. I think if someone is employed, that's a clear line. If they're on a board, I think cautioning them or asking them if they could really be objective is good. And also just for them to be mindful that that might put them in a position on that board that they're not comfortable with. I mean, what if there's some outcome that board doesn't like, and they're kind of saying, well, Joe, you worked with them, what happened? So it could also affect them in ways that they may not be happy with, depending on things. Just kind of eyes wide open for the individual, maybe.
It's an interesting point. Thank you, Monique.
My only thought is if it's we're allotting funds for a service that they may potentially want to use, and they would vote in favor of one, that would be a conflict. As far as people on board, again, they're looking for whatever it is. So I think thing about survivors who haven't had the service for 2 years in the past, like a couple of years, it seems to me like it would be a conflict if someone wants those services for themselves rather than for their benefit of their patient. But I don't know. I can't really. I do think that it's going to be hard to comes to survivors. My main thought focus is and conflict of interest with them. Just a hard way to, like a double-edged sword. It's hard to be able to say how do people, make a decision, and these people. I'm confused.
Sandy, you are breaking up a little bit, so I don't know if that's just I'm having difficulty hearing it, or if that's having if everyone is, but just be aware that one of the things, though, if I got the gist of what you're saying is, again, this money will be used to increase existing salaries. It is not money to expand services into new areas. I do think that based on our knowledge of the work that the Alliance of Providers and BIAV have been doing, is that they will be working up a formula to show what their recommendations are. So this is not a place where I think we have to worry. And I'm not saying that negates any of the feedback so far. Just trying to help people not be too worried, but that you're not funding new services or adding new services in any place. So is it accurate that we're clear that no staff person of an organization that will benefit from financially still on the fence about board members and survivors?
I think, as Donna brought up, if we add those in, the board members and survivors, I think that takes away from our pool pretty substantially. So I guess we've all decided the staff is like a hard no. We're not gonna let those people on, but maybe with the people that are on board or survivors, needs to be taken with a, I don't know if I want to say with a grain of salt, but even instructing them, as part of this board, you are sitting in this position, Virginia Brain Injury Council on the, in this form, dissemination committee, kind of put that hat on.
So we want to make that clear when we at the meeting, when we speak to the responsibilities of this committee, that should be something that should be highlighted.
I think so too. I agree with Kara. I think also, we could also introduce language in the meeting that suggests to individuals that if it would be difficult for them to be objective given their relationship or affiliation as a client, then there's other service opportunities that we have on the VBIC, and this might not be the right one this go around.
So I will also say,
Kara, thank you.
yeah, that was well said. But this tends to be a really difficult committee to staff. So we're not going to be overrun with volunteers for this one.
All right. Hopefully I caught Kara's beautifully said statement. And what we'll do is Donna and I will put together kind of a worksheet for this, and we'll run it by you all to get your input on what should be presented. So And Kara, the bylaws are clear. You get to make the appointments to the committee. So, but as Donna indicated, you may not be overwhelmed with.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing that needs to happen at the meeting is to also appoint, I've said convene, but appoint the priorities letter committee. April is the time when that group is always asked to get together to start working on the priorities. We wanted to throw out to you a thought that's been kind of rumbling around, but typically the committee is appointed in April and gets its feedback to the council April, May, and July, and then gets a letter to the commissioner by August. However, by that time, really, budget decisions and input to the secretariat and for the governor's budget. Not that all these things have to do with money, but direction has already been kind of sent up through to the secretariat and the governor, because those things happen in late spring of every year. So Donna and I wanted to put out to you two that obviously we can't turn back time for this year, but do we want to look at, and this is a part of why I didn't include bylaws for you to look at this time, do we want to look at the time frame for that and changing that for next year, say perhaps starting in January, so that in April a recommendation can be made, and then the commissioner has time to consider the council's feedback while she is making decisions about what priorities she wants to put forward to the secretary. Did that make sense? That's a lot of different moving time frames there. So.
That made sense. I mean, I think that does sound like a good idea for the following year. Because, you know, being part of the priorities letter committee last year, it did seem, you know, rather quick. And of course, when you're trying to schedule with like 4 people's schedules, it's never an easy thing.
I
So,
agree.
Carrie,
I feel like this is like Team Kara.
I love it.
I keep on saying, I'm like, I agree with Kara. I feel like we didn't like discuss this ahead of time, just so you know.
Yeah. The next time we discuss things, I want to know where you got those earrings, because I'm gonna have to like buy myself a pair.
Okay. I'll text the link to you.
Thanks.
I also think the other consideration is there's an opportunity to just make sure that we align the writing of the priorities letter with the state action plan. Like, I mean, because I feel like in the state action plan committee, we've mentioned before that we want to make sure that we're aligning with the priorities letter. So I'm just, will a different timeline be conducive to that? I mean, I think it will.
Yeah. If we're saying that we'll go ahead and appoint a priorities committee now, or at the April meeting, to report back in July, that gives that group time to coordinate as well with the state plan committee on where they are. And then in January, the priorities committee could be informed by the state plan as well. Does that line up with kind of what you're thinking?
Yes, because we'll have a codified state plan by then. Right?
We hope so. We really hope so.
But it would be really close.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question? And if this is out of line or whatever, just Chris or Kara, tell me, either Kara, tell me to hush up. So the priorities committee just met last summer. Could that committee's work be carried over, or can that newest committee just reevaluate that letter? Because I don't believe priorities are actually changing that much. Does the question make sense?
I think, Donna, to me, it's always been interesting, and I'm not sure about other people. You know, we haven't always had an active state plan, but within the state plan, is the priorities letter really to highlight where the state plan is going to cover 3 to 4 years? The priorities is to really say to DARS, we think this issue is really important for the next year. Now, we kind of cast a wide net for the last one. We just said, yes, everything is important. But the priorities is the letter is the time to be able to say perhaps something, you know, for example, in the follow-up to COVID, we would really like to see some action on this, either as reflected in the state plan, or we feel that the state plan, you know, should be updated. But it's really kind of saying in the coming 12 months, this particular area is something we'd really like you to focus on. A good example is the fact that in the last priorities letter, the council did say to the commissioner, we feel that there has not been any movement and worry that it's being forgotten, that there is a request for sharing of information between DBHDS and DARS. And when that went to the it was part of a number of other priorities, but when that went to the commissioner's desk, she did sit back and say, thank you for bringing this to my attention, and I'm going to take some action. And we'll be able to, and when we talk about our next federal grant, we'll be able to talk about how some of that came to fruition and where that has since gone as a point to that. So to me, that kind of illustrates what the value of the priorities letter could be, and that is to highlight 1 or 2 issues that the council wants to say, this is really important to us. Is that helpful, or does that only add more gray?
I think that would be extremely helpful and actually take away gray.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay. Sandy and Monique, what are you guys thinking about the priorities letter committee and the priorities letter?
Oh, sorry. I was just saying I agreed with Kara.
I agree as well. The letter we did just last fall, summer, would have all of the, you know, so much valuable information already in it. I think they could just bring it to that meeting and use it, you know, and make their job less tedious.
Is that how, the way everyone's feeling, that just moving the previous letter, or is it that the committee will meet but is asked to collaborate to gain input from the state plan committee in prioritizing 1 or 2 items for the 2021 priorities letter?
I think they can meet and then prioritize. So the option,
Gotcha.
second option, yeah.
So the directions to the priorities letter committee will be, and again, I think we're moving towards this nice idea of, you know, giving people a sense of what it means to be on that committee, each of the committees, and how they can, what they can contribute or what they'll be contributing. So we're going to say that if you're interested in being appointed to the priorities letter committee, you're going to be doing a few things. You're going to be looking at last year's priority letter, which had a lot in it. You're going to be looking at what's in the state plan that's being developed, and within that, making recommendations to council for 1 or 2 areas that the council really wants to highlight and to pass along to the commissioner. Does that capture people's feelings of where this goes?
Mm-hmm.
And then the follow-up step is that will move the time frame forward for the following year. So in a sense, the priorities committee, the priorities letter committee will finish their work in the fall, but a new committee will be reappointed in January and will begin the work again only on a new time frame. Same ideas, same process, just an earlier time frame so that the commissioner has that on her desk when she's making her decisions about what to move forward. I know that she will really appreciate that. She has indicated that as well, that sometimes it's hard to get something, especially if it's going to require going to the governor's budget or to the secretary. But okay, all right. That's another. I said that already. That's one of the reasons why we didn't submit bylaws for you, because that will require a bylaws change to be voted on. But we'll have that done before the January appointment of the. Okay. And Kara with a C, don't worry, we will be getting you copious notes on this for the meeting and presenting it, since you'll be presenting this at your first meeting as chair.
Sure. I'm taking some copious notes too on the side
Okay.
here.
All right.
Got my double screens going on.
Yeah. Okay. We figured that that's a lot, just the discussions about those two committees, and are suggesting a break after that. Next up on the agenda is the state plan committee meeting, which really is just going to be, we anticipate letting folks know that they have not met this month. They needed to take a little break to kind of digest the information. And so nothing new to report. And if they have any steps that they're looking forward to, but they're going to be actively stepping back into that process in April. The next thing we'd like to propose, if you feel like this would be a good use of the council's time, is we'd like to do two things. Every 6 months, Donna puts together a very complex report that goes to the Administration on Community Living, the ACL, about the goals and the work that's been done on the federal grant. So we thought that one was just presented in January, sharing some of the highlights of what's been achieved with the federal grant money. And we are in the process of narrowing down, excuse me, our focus areas for what we want to put into the next federal grant. And so we wanted to share that with the council and hear any feedback that they might have. Would that feel like a good use of council's time?
I think so. I mean, any feedback that we can get and also feedback that can be given, I feel like is beneficial.
So I don't know that I think that's actually going to take 30 minutes. I do think that the introduction and welcome is going to take more than 15 minutes. So I mean, shifting that, I mean, because not only do we need to get the introductions of the new members, but they need to be introduced to us.
Mm-hmm.
Or you all.
So you think if we did 30 minutes for the introductions and then 15 minutes for the report, that might work?
I mean, if it has to, my personal opinion is that introductory part's going to be important for the new folks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Sandy and Monique, what do you think about expanding the welcome and introduction and all that entails to 30 minutes and pulling back the time on the report on the current grant and focus areas for the upcoming grant?
I think it's a very reasonable thing to do. Makes sense to me.
I mean, and if the 15 minutes and 30 minutes doesn't work, 25 and 20 or something, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a straight flip.
I think originally I wasn't sure if you were saying, Donna, that you thought it would take more than 30 minutes for the intros. I also had my son banging on something for a minute, so I didn't want to subject you guys. But yeah, I mean, I think we definitely need more time for the intros. I think the grant stuff could certainly be faster. But I do think it's important to do. I don't know. I feel like 30 minutes even for the intros. I think that's going to be what we need at least. So I guess I think the grants could be done in 15. The grant could be done in 15.
Well, let me ask you this. The last item on the agenda, and it's one that I think is valuable, but it is not time sensitive. And this is something actually Chair Kara sent to me a while ago, and that was some information on discussion on person-centered language. And it introduced a concept that was relatively new to me, and that is, in the field of, when working with people with disabilities, my training coming up was that you use language that puts the person first and then the disability. So people with autism, not autistic people. And now there is some new ideas. There are some new ideas coming forward that some people actually prefer disability-centric language and other people prefer person-first language. It's kind of like pronouns. What do you want, that describes you. And in terms of the board's continuing growth, learning, and discussion about person-centered practices that help us to better engage and listen to the voices of people with lived experience, I thought that the information that Kara sent was really, really, really interesting. So had put it on a list of future board topics, perhaps, to talk about. Now, that can stay on the agenda for this meeting, and we can do what we're talking about in terms of expanding that. I fully agree that first section needs more than 15 minutes. I selfishly have an interest in hearing people's feedback about the upcoming ACL grant, but I'm not wedded to that, and that all could be done in 15 to 20 minutes if it's more of a report out and less of a feedback in. But depending on where you'd like to go, we can do it with those changes, or we can save the discussion of person-centered language to have a little bit more flexibility in the schedule.
Chris, with the piece that's on the ACL, are you thinking that that's more of a direct report, or would you want to have a discussion? Because that might help us figure out timing, whether it's more just kind of one way or a discussion.
I think Donna has some really good things to share with the council about what was achieved in the last 6-month reporting period. So that's what we were thinking about. And oversight of the federal grant is one of the roles of the council. So reporting back on the highlight, not everything that's in that report, because really we want you to stay awake during that period. The second part, and again, this is where I get a little bit selfish because this part is my part. So the first one is a report out. The second half of that item is, this is what we're thinking, where we're thinking of going. Do you have any comments for us? And it may be, nope, makes sense to us. It may be, hey, have you ever, thought about it? It may be, here's why I feel like this is an important area.
The reason I ask is, I think that describing the context isn't going to be important. I mean, we've talked about just taking some of this slow and, unpacking what ACL is, what these grants mean. There might need to be some background given. And that might just require, you know, a slower pace for us so that everyone kind of grasps what this means. I'm just thinking now, if it's not just a report out, but if it's feedback the council might have, we might need more time for that section. If you're thinking that the person-centered language discussion is kind of a sacrificial agenda item, perhaps we let it be a sacrificial agenda item. I wonder what it would, I wonder if it's within our purview to have a tentative item, like we have item I or whatever this item is as tentative or time pending, and we get to it if we get to it. You know, if we do have 30 minutes at the end, perhaps we could discuss it, but perhaps we could
I
also.
wonder if there would be value in maybe, you know, introducing the person-centered language article at the council meeting or sending it ahead of time so people come prepared. And with that in mind, in the item G, if we're going to be asking for Chris, if you're going to be asking for feedback, I think we have to also account for the processing time that's needed, and maybe we have to send some stuff ahead of time on that for people to think about. I don't know if that's putting it out there too soon, or you know, if that shows a hand that you're not ready to show, or I mean, I know that things aren't secret, but you know what I mean. But I think that when we're asking for feedback, we have to be really mindful of these new rules we've set up and give them time.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think y'all have made some really good points, and sending out stuff. I mean, not only is that going to give more time, but that's also, you know, going to be for if people are better auditory versus visual learners, and taking in all of that information. I mean, as interested as I am in discussion in person-centered language, I do feel like I don't want to cut short the report and then the feedback, because like Chris said, this is very important. Rightfully so.
I agree with all what you all just said very much. I'm very interested in the discussion of person-centered language, but perhaps that could be on somewhere else down the line. And then that frees up the time. And then should we decide whether or not to acknowledge the former commissioner, that would add a few minutes for that to be said as well. And it would just be less compact and a little bit more open for discussion and input.
Really good point, Sandy. Yeah, that's the other piece there, and that is how do you feel about you know, it will be 6 weeks from now, and some ways that feels like a long time away, but on the other hand, Jim Rothrock was a big presence, so it'll be a long time before his memory leaves us anyway. So it may still feel very, very, very current to folks. Do you want to make some time on the agenda as well for an acknowledgement or some recognition of Commissioner Rothrock's contributions?
I'm trying to keep up. For some reason today, I feel like I keep missing things, or I'm not like getting everything entirely. But I guess now I'm not feeling like I'm not seeing the time for these things. Right, like if it is feedback, which is what Kara was saying, we just can't. I mean, 15 minutes. I don't think we'll do that. So I don't know where we're finding the time, but I agree that we should have some kind of acknowledgement of Commissioner Rothrock. I just don't know now where we're finding time for all the things on the agenda, especially with our new approach of which I think is what Donna was saying.
Yep. Does this mean that we're leaning towards discussion of person-centered language if time allows, and that time may just be an introduction of the topic for the following meeting?
I like that.
Sure, that'd be perfect.
That works.
Okay. And I think what I'm getting is everyone feels positively about doing something in honor of Commissioner Rothrock. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We will clean up the agenda then. We will put together the sheets that kind of outline the responsibilities of each of the committees. Definitely have heard and agree that anything that we're doing, Donna's report, the focus areas of the ACL grant, and we don't know. We're hoping that by the time of the next meeting, we're wrapping up the writing of that grant, but we'll see. That those things will definitely go out at least 2 weeks in advance so that people have time to review them. Well, thank you for talking through all that. It's really helpful to hear everybody's perspective on how we use council's time.
I have something that I'm not sure if this is, I know sometimes like Marcia Dubois or the commissioner will say a few words. Is that just not on the agenda for this time?
Typically, I will ask the commissioner if she wants to say anything. Do you all have a feeling, would you like that to be a regular item? Would you like to just invite them each time beforehand? I probably should do that before we present a draft agenda to you, but.
I think that would, for myself, being a new member and involvement in all of this, just to get to know the players better, to give them an opportunity to speak and let me get to know them a little would be very helpful. Would be something I would like one way or another.
I think that since these are commissioner appointees, it's really important for the commissioner or deputy commissioner to be present, even if it's just for that introduction. I think it will go a long way with those new individuals too, just to know that that presence is there and that they're valued. So I guess what I'm saying is presence might be more important than like giving a talk on commission updates.
Mm-hmm.
Like a welcoming.
It's just a welcome. It's and if there's anything important that they do want to share, that there's a little bit of time for that. But really, it's a welcome and thank you for. Okay, I think that they would, between the two of them, they would definitely agree and could make that time commitment.
Good.
Marcia is always, the deputy commissioner is always at those meetings unless she has a big conflict. So, okay, we will make that a standard agenda item and a standard invite. But it won't be a long period of time.
Right. It might also this time, Chris, and this is just an idea, be a really good introduction into Funds Dissemination Committee. Thank you, advocates, for doing all this work. Now let's put together a funds committee.
Good idea.
Okay. Got it. Nice. Okay. I'm very cognizant that it's 3:55. We had some other things. Well, we already talked about the rescheduling of the priorities letter. Board self-assessment, again, not a time-sensitive item. It's something that I would like to discuss with you guys at some point. But it's, that we start doing that as a way to, as the board has been doing some fantastic work. We continue to get just really great feedback from people who are watching the council meetings about how appreciative they are of what they cover, how they cover it, how processes are changing. So continuing that growth of the board is something that we'll look at, but that is not required for today. But I want to make sure, because mostly this has been me asking for things. Are there other things that you would like to see on the agenda, or are there other things that you would like to discuss today while you're all together?
My only other thing is just stepping into the secretary role. I just want to make sure that I have things that I'm gonna need. I like to have a template, or somebody helping me out with that.
So Kara, this is going to be, this has been done different ways with different secretaries. And so what I would think would work best, and we can talk about how this works, is I'll put together a really quick draft and send it to you, and then you can work it from there. Because I've got the recording, I've got the notes, and it just makes sense for me to do it and send it to you.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Yeah, because if I didn't ask this question now, Donna, I'd be shooting you an email as soon as we jump off of this.
I know. I know. It's fine. And I'll have something to you probably tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
I would also, if there's any direction or suggestions that anyone has that they could give me in my area of perhaps organizations I could visit, or, you know, just network a little more, because I work from home and I don't really leave the house very much. So, and my son is placed out of state, so I don't have one-on-one anymore with local facilities. And I would love to be more hands-on if I, you know, kind of knew the places that would be a benefit for me to go. If anybody has any ideas, I mean, otherwise I'm just researching on my own. But if any of you have any direction you could point me in, or any places that, you know, might be nice for me to visit, I'd be happy to, on behalf of the family.
Sandy, would you like it if we make some introductions for you to meet some of the programs, the state-funded brain injury programs?
I would love that.
All right, I'll work with you on that.
Okay.
Particularly in your area. And Sandy, I also have on my agenda to call you and talk to you about, you know, roles coming up in the orientation and things like that for the new members. So,
Okay. That would be great. I would
and
really.
Cliff, I can hold for that if you want to as well. That's fine.
Thank you for asking, Sandy. That's wonderful.
I'm happy to play more of a part than just sitting on Zoom meetings. I'd like more hands-on. And, you know, the mom of us.
You're joining me.
Be careful what you wish for. Anything else?
I don't have anything else that I think I want to add on.
Well, thank you all for your input. We really do value it. And we look forward now to having these meetings in preparation for the council. It's a really great experience for us. So thank you. All right. You'll be getting some information from us. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Donna, don't go nowhere.
Okay, so you want to stop the live stream? Hold on, let me stop this live stream. Betsy?
I just wanted to show you the hat I crocheted. That's all.
Very nice.
All righty then. Have a good one, Donna. I'm getting ready on my way home.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye now.
Bye.